what did your father do as a part of the retinue of Abdu'l-Bahá? This has always been a question mark in my mind. We don't know. But I'll just tell you the historical fact. The historical fact is something like this, that Abdu'l-Bahá left Iran with 2 secretaries. Later, both secretaries became covenant breakers. Dr. Farid and Ahmad Sohrab. He had 2 secretaries. Then he had his chronicler, his historian, that was Mr. Mahmoud Zarqani. Then he had Said Astullah Qawmi. You have seen his picture. He's rather short and he has a white beard. And he had an excellent handwriting. And sometimes Abdu'l-Bahá used him for him to dictate tablets. Instead of writing them himself, he would dictate it to Said Astullah Qawmi because he had a lovely handwriting. And of course, he also knew he was a very good cook. And whenever Abdu'l-Bahá was alone, he would help through cooking and things. That was it. There were 4. That was all. But at the same time, he instructed 2 individuals. One is Waliullah Varqa in Tehran. Another, this Mirza Ali Akbar Nakhjavani in Baku. At the same time, he instructed them, travel to New York directly and meet me in New York. I'll be there. These 2 people did not know why they were being instructed by Abdu'l-Bahá to go. They did not know. It was the instruction of Abdu'l-Bahá. Okay, no problem. So they left. And they met Abdu'l-Bahá and joined his retinue. That was all. Abdu'l-Bahá had his own wisdom. We can sit down and now guess why he did this and why he did that. For example, in the case of Waliullah Varqa, he was the son of the famous martyr, Ali Muhammad Varqa, the wonderful martyr, with his son, Ruhullah. And this Waliullah Varqa is the brother of Ruhullah Varqa, who was martyred with his son. It was an excellent situation for Abdu'l-Bahá to speak about martyrdom. And here is this Waliullah Khan, who is a member of that family. Wonderful. Now, this is a guess only. We don't know. Mirza Ali Akbar Nakhjavani, he comes from where Azerbaijan, that part of Azerbaijan was part of Russia. Whenever you look at the pictures, the extracts from the list of passengers, you see my father's name, country, Russia. It doesn't say Azerbaijan or anything, because it was part of Russia. So he was, and he spoke excellent Russian. And so it showed the spread of the cause. It has reached Russia. And you see talks given by Abdu'l-Bahá. Here we are sitting, Baha'is from Persia, Baha'is from Europe, from England, from Germany, all of us together, Baha'is from Russia, from the Caucasus. The Caucasus, that was Azerbaijan. So maybe he was thinking of the spread of the Caucasus. We don't know. He never said it. I have not seen anything. Also, I think there is another point which I would like to just throw this as a possibility. And this was mentioned to me. I think it was our very dear Mrs. Iran Muhajir who taught me this, brought this to my attention. That maybe because these 2 were firm believers in the covenant, he wanted his retinue to have strong believers, to watch over everything what could be done by especially those 2, the 2 secretaries. Maybe this was another possibility. So we can think about it. Maybe we can find other reasons, but there is nothing that I have seen in writing from the pen of Abdu'l-Bahá on this subject. This one is will you please share a few words on creating true unity in our communities, as well as our services, institutions, for example, a spiritual assembly? What practical ways do you suggest? As you know, unity is a basic teaching of our faith. I'm giving you my personal opinion, maybe through experience, maybe through meditation, thinking, but primarily through reading the writings. I'm telling you. Abdu'l-Bahá says, when you look at others, look at their strong points. When you look at yourself, look at your weak points. I'm using my own words. I think when we look at others and see their strong points, he even says, if one has even one strong point and 10 weak points, look at that one and forget the others. Do we forget the others? We blow it up. We even go as far as not only not concealing it, we will broadcast it. It becomes gossip. These are the things that cause disunity. We have to look at the good qualities of others, praise even others, encourage others for their good qualities. That brings unity. But if we broadcast and we only look at the bad points of others, it's not going to work. And we have to be, as we have discussed it so many times here, about forgiving, forgetting. Let bygones to be bygones. We look at the good side of people. That creates love. That creates unity. I would like to thank this dear friend of ours who chanted for us, sang for us, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Aliyyul A'la. Apart from the fact that he had a beautiful voice, and the song itself is, of course, most beautiful, as you noticed, we heard every single syllable. The melody or the voice did not in any way interfere with the enunciation, the articulation of the words which are revealed words. And so many times I see some of the friends come and sing or chant. You hardly know what they are singing, what they are chanting. The words are completely lost, crushed. It is as if the important thing was to hear the voice, that the important thing was the melody. The important thing are the words. That has effect. Then supported by the voice, supported by the melody, not the other way around. The words sometimes are sacrificed, so much so that you don't recognize them, whether it's English, whether it's Arabic, whether it's Spanish, whether it's Italian, God knows. I would like to express once again my deep gratitude. It was beautiful, very beautiful. I'll share with you two little stories before we go to the questions again. I heard this story from Mr. Faizi. I'm sure you all know Mr. Faizi very well. He was hand of the cause of God. He told me that once he was traveling in the villages in Iran, and he said that he arrived in a small village where there were few Baha'is, and he spent the evening there with them and spoke about the faith and things to encourage them and so on. He said, in the morning, I went for a little walk in the village. As I was walking, I saw two people sitting on the ground. And I recognized them. They were at the meeting the night before. They were Baha'is. But they were sitting on the ground, and one of them was an elderly gentleman, and the other one was a youth. And the youth was asking the elderly gentleman, I have not experienced the power of the Holy Spirit and the power of divine assistance. How does this work? Could you explain it to me? How shall I understand the power of the cause of God, the way it comes to us and helps us? So, when I heard this question, I immediately withdrew to a little corner so that I will not be noticed. Because I wanted to see what the elderly gentleman is going to say. And the elderly gentleman said, there was apparently an ant walking on its errand to find some food. He said, you see this ant here on the ground? He said, yeah. He said, supposing you tell this ant, go to Tehran, will it be able to go? The answer of the youth was, no, very unlikely, it's impossible. How can this little ant find its way to Tehran? He said, but I'll tell you something. He said, supposing that someone, of course this is making an analogy, making up a story. Supposing someone will tell this ant that you cannot go to Tehran. That's true. But don't you know that there is a bus in our village that's going to Tehran? Why don't you go to this bus and stick yourself to the body of the bus? And so this little ant thinks it's not a bad idea. So it goes and finds the bus. It was very near to where they were. And climbs up from the tires up to the body of the bus and sticks its own body to the body of the bus. And the time comes for the bus to travel. There is a lot of noise, there is a lot of wind, then there is a lot of dust as the bus is moving. Then there was a lot of rain and a storm, and the ant continued to stick itself to the bus. He said, do you know what happened? The bus reached Tehran, and the ant reached Tehran. And the ant found its way out from the body of the bus and came to the ground, and it was in Tehran. Now, he gave this example, and Mr. Faizi was so thrilled to hear this. And he finally said, my dear friend, if you want to experience the power of the cause, stick to the cause. Stick to the body of the cause. Don't give up. There may be tests, there may be winds, there may be anything. Hold on. Be firm, steadfast, and the bus will take you. And the bus will take you to victories, it will take you to triumphs, to miracles will happen, because you'll see you finally reach your destination and you'll experience this power. I thought to share with you this little story. I have also another little story about Janab Furutan, the hand of the cause of God. Now, I was present at that time at this particular meeting. A letter had come from Shoghi Effendi about the greatness of the cause and the triumph of the cause in the future. It's all in Persian. And in that letter of Shoghi Effendi, he says that this great triumph that we are expecting for the cause of God will happen. The word he used in Persian is ajibe. It's not strange, it is something that we don't know how it's going to be. Not the usual thing. Unfamiliar. Unusual. Unusual. The other thing is, it will happen suddenly. These methods will work suddenly. And yet another quality that he mentions is unexpected. And it will be unexpected. The Persian word that he used in that particular letter of Shoghi Effendi was غير مترقبة, unexpected. And this will happen. The friends should know that such things, such a big triumph will happen in this way. Okay, that was very impressive, of course, of the words of Shoghi Effendi. Then there was a little discussion. There was about 6 or 7 of the friends sitting, and Janab Furutan was in the meeting, and I happened to be there also. And then one of the friends said, I have been thinking about this. I think it's going to happen in this way. The other friend said, no, I don't think so. I think it's going to be in that way. Finally, the third person said, it's none of these two. I know how it's going to happen. He said it's going to happen like this, like this, like this, like this. Wow. Of course, everybody was listening to what he was saying. After finishing his exposition, Mr. Furutan, with his sharp mind, looked at him. He said, oh, this is very interesting, you know. And you have thought about this, haven't you? Oh, yes, for a long time. And then he said, and you're sure it's going to happen like this? He said, yes. So this is what you are expecting will happen? He said, yes. Now look at this remark of Mr. Furutan. He said, so you are expecting, you said. He said, but Shoghi Effendi says it's going to be unexpected. So what you say is not going to happen. It was really wonderful, the way he like a trap. He laid the trap for him, and he fell in the trap, and then he caught him. Yeah. The condition of the world is deteriorating rapidly. What should the Baha'is do? From my reading of the writings of Shoghi Effendi on this subject, especially those in English, it is very clear, in my opinion, that it's too late to do anything. Too late. This is a process of disintegration, and it's on, it's going on. The people of the world did not accept Baha'u'llah, except for a handful, except for the group, the small number of believers compared to the population of the earth, the people of the earth. So, as a result, there has been a process of disintegration, internal disintegration. And this is going to go on. While this is going on, we have our own process of integration, which is, of course, the teaching of the cause and the growth of the cause of God and so on. So this disintegration is going to come to a climax. There is no question about that. A major climax. And it has had different stages, and it's arriving at this final stage. What we have to do is to teach the cause, my dear friends. This is the 10th time I'm saying this. You must be tired with me. But what can I say? This is what I understand. I am sharing it with you. We have to teach the cause. We have to strengthen the foundations of our community. That's what we must do. God has His major plan for humanity, and He's organizing it. He knows how to do it better than we do. In one of his letters, Shoghi Effendi says, invisible hand of God is at work. یاد غیبی در کار است. The invisible hand of God is at work. It's the major plan of God is at work. So we have to worry about ourselves. We have to strengthen our community. We have to make it ready for the attacks that we have in the future on the cause. Today we don't have attacks maybe as serious, as very serious in any way. Why? Because we are a small minority compared to the population of the world. But when we have more Baha'is coming in, as you know, for the process of the teaching work, Shoghi Effendi clearly points out to us that there are 3 stages. First is individual conversion, and we are still in the stage of individual conversion. The second stage is entry by troops, and the House of Justice is continuously telling us that we have to prepare ourselves for this process, try to accelerate the process of entry by troops. And then finally, of course, he refers to mass conversion, which will come later. And then he adds, we cannot even dimly visualize how it is going to be, which corresponds with the word unexpectedly. It's the same thing, but he uses the term. We cannot even dimly visualize how it will be. That's the third stage, okay. So what we have to do is, this process is on. We have to worry about ourselves, about our community, to make our community stronger, firmer, more knowledgeable, more steadfast. That's what we have to do. And the deterioration is going to continue, undoubtedly. What is His Holiness Christ's place in comparison to the station of the Blessed Beauty? Yes, this is of course a very good question. The Kitab-i-Ighan is the answer. Baha'u'llah teaches us in the Kitab-i-Ighan that all the manifestations of God have 2 stations. One station is a station of differentiation. They come at different times, they come with different personalities, they come with different messages in this process of divine revelation. And the other is the status or the stage of unity, the condition of unity. In that case, all the manifestations are the same. They all sit on the same throne, deliver the same message, and they have the same authority, but they speak according to the needs and the requirements of each age. So we have 2 things to bear in mind. Now, when you read the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, you see very clearly that Shoghi Effendi says that Baha'u'llah was a manifestation of God. He is confirming that the ringstone symbol that we have, which has 3 levels, the middle level is the manifestations of God. So it is not God Himself, which is the top line. Baha'u'llah makes it very clear in his prayers and meditations. How many times he addresses God, he says, how can we know you? You know, how great is your knowledge? How great is your power? So even the manifestations of God cannot reach that very height of divinity, the essence of divinity. It's impossible. And we are just at the very bottom of this ringstone symbol. We are creation, we are human beings. We receive our share of divine revelation from the middle line, which is the manifestations of God, the holy ones of God, those who are inspired by God. That's the middle. Of course, in the case of the Universal House of Justice, not the individual members, the institution is inspired, not the individual members. They don't have any authority, none. But when they decide something, it's different. So, this is my understanding. So, Christ and Baha'u'llah, in one sense, they are all manifestations of God. In a different sense, because they have come at different times, they bring different messages, and they have different functions to perform. Baha'u'lláh has come in order to bring about the oneness of humanity, universal peace, in a completely new cycle. And he has the first dispensation of a cycle which is going to be 500,000 years, the Baha'i cycle. And the first dispensation, who is also Baha'u'lláh himself, minimum 1,000 years. It could be 1,200, 1,500, 2,000, God knows. Nobody knows. Minimum 1,000. That's the first dispensation within the Baha'i cycle of 500,000 years. And Shaykh Effendi has explained that before the Baha'i cycle of 500,000 years, there was an Adamic cycle. The Adamic cycle the Adamic cycle, he says, extended over a period of 6,000 years. And it began with Adam and ended with Muhammad. Are we going to be busy in the next world too? He's tired of this world. Now he wants to go and rest in the next world. I have bad news for you. You're going to be very busy. That's very clear. See what Tablet of Ahmad says. And a service in both worlds. Read the gleanings of Baha'u'lláh. He says, the sciences, the arts, all these wonders of the world are inspired by the sanctified souls of the world above, the realms above. So, of course, they have functions to perform. They will be given jobs, they will be given responsibilities. So, it's not the time for rest at all. Could you please explain about the words of God? How can I explain about the words? Yeah. It's impossible. And what about their connection with this world? You know, it's easy to understand that there are 3 stages for human existence. It is very easy to understand that. And this is in the writings of Baha'u'lláh, clearly stated, restated and explained by Abdu'l-Bahá, and also in the writings of Shaykh Effendi. The first stage is the embryonic stage, when we are all passing through this development in the wombs of our mothers. That's the first stage. The second stage is this world. But the 2 worlds are one world, not 2. The embryo is in this world. We were in this world already at the point of conception. The human soul came, according to Shaykh Effendi, the conception, the human soul appears at the point of conception. That's clearly stated by Shaykh Effendi. When there is, in simple words, pregnancy. When there is pregnancy, the human soul comes. It's very clear. All right? So this conception, this pregnancy is in this world. So the embryo is in this world. They even take a picture of the embryo and show it to the mother. And the mother, okay. Sees its own embryo. It's in this world. Now, the third world, which is the next world, is also in this world. Not another universe, another solar system very far away. No, it's here. Abdu'l-Bahá has made it so clear. He says, the next world and this world, this is the analogy he uses. He says, you think of a pot of flour. Supposing these flowers here are not cut flowers, and there is a pot and there is a soil, and they are growing in this soil of the pot. They exist. They are in this world. They are growing. And somebody comes from the system here and pours some water. And every so often there is a need to change the soil or some fertilizer to help the enrichment of the soil. Okay, so this is not my example, by the way. I'm telling you, it's Abdu'l-Bahā's example. So this is growing, living, organic. But the flowers themselves, or that particular flower by itself, does not know that it is at Green Acre. Does not know who is that person who has watered it. They say that even it's possible to have affection for the vegetable world, and they feel it. If music is played, if it's soft music, they enjoy it. When it is boom, 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 they withdraw their leaves. They're not happy. They're living things, but they are not aware of us, that they are sitting here in front of us. They are not aware that we are talking about them. They have no idea where they are. But we see them, they don't see us. So the third world, the next world, is a very clear thing. We are not talking about three worlds, we are talking about one world. All three are one. They see us, we don't see them. Baha'u'lláh goes as far as saying that if the children do some good service to humanity or to the cause, the parents in the other world are happy. That our children are now doing some good things for humanity. They are happy. And the opposite is true. If they disregard the laws of God, they become unhappy, sad. Why are they doing like this? This world, everything is in this world. Now, the complicated point is this question, if it only said the world, the next world, it would be easy to understand. The problem is that it is true, it's not just one world. The word world is in the plural. That's the problem. Nobody knows. How is it possible that it's not only one world, worlds of God? How is that? I don't know. And I haven't read anything in the writings to explain what this plural is. I don't know. I cannot conceive it myself. It's impossible for us to conceive it. I feel exactly like that embryo who's trying to understand what is outside the embryo. It's impossible. We don't know. So I'm afraid I have no answer when it's plural. But I have some understanding, some limited understanding, when it comes to if it is only one world, it's almost very clear. Could you comment on the possibility of World War III? I think they have taken seriously my statement about my prophethood. After the First World War, as you all know, Abdu'l-Bahá clearly said that there will be a second war. And this has been quoted by Shoghi Effendi. Because he could see that the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles, that was the outcome of the First World War, had many defects, although it created the League of Nations, which is wonderful. But it had basic defects. The constitution that was devised was not fair, was not equitable. So he said, no, this is not going to work. There will be another war. And of course, the Second World War happened, whereas the First World War ended in 1918. The situation deteriorated, the League of Nations failed, it collapsed, and a few years later, there was a war. And we had the Second World War. The First World War was 4 years. The Second World War was 5 years. It ended in 1945. Then, what happened in 1945? The Allies at that time, who were the conquerors and who won the war and defeated the Axis powers, as they were called at that time, got together and a new system came into being, the United Nations. And it was in those days United Nations Organization. It used to be referred to as UNO. And then they dropped the O and it became UN. All right. But this new UNO or UN has basic defects also. As I was telling you this morning, one of its major defects is that it does not address the question of national sovereignty. They were afraid to enter into that area, so they left it intact. And that's its weakness. It's going to fail. There's no question in my mind. Any intelligent person studying the conditions, the political conditions in the world, will come to the same conclusion. Now, this is an individual view, okay. But now, just as Abdu'l-Bahá said there will be a Second World War, Shoghi Effendi, our beloved Shoghi Effendi, writing in 1948, that's 3 years after the United Nations came into existence, he wrote, you can check it in your book, Citadel of Faith. Look for the messages of Shoghi Effendi of the year 1948, 3 years after the end of it. There are 2-3 messages. One of them starts with the words that, as I look, I'm using my words, as I look at the horizons of the world, I see that there are dark clouds which indicate that there will be yet another conflict. This yet another conflict, I have remembered the exact words. You can go to Ocean, put another conflict and see what comes. And you'll get the page. And you read the first paragraph. And in this he clearly says, because the horizon is so dark, it is an indication that it's going to be yet another conflict. It's not going to work. 1948. He passed away 9 years later, 1957. And now we are in the year 2012. So I leave it to you to come to your own conclusions. Please explain the law of Huququ'lláh. This is a major subject. How can I say it in few words? However, this law of Huququ'lláh, frankly, is a unique law. You don't find its equal or anything similar to it in the laws and ordinances of other faiths before the Baha'i faith. Baha'u'llah created himself this institution. There is some reference to it in a different form in the Bayan. Baha'u'llah was the founder of this new law that he devised, giving full details, whereas in the Bayan is just a brief reference to the right of God that should not be forgotten. But here Baha'u'llah is explaining to us. And questions were put to him and he clarified. And again more questions were asked and he further clarified. Abdu'l-Bahá further amplified and clarified. Shoghi Effendi himself made further explanations and elucidations. Even the House of Justice had to make further explanations and elucidate. We have a whole compilation of texts on Huququ'lláh. It is a fascinating subject. Believe me. Baha'u'llah makes it very clear. that Huququ'lláh is not a tax. It is, when you use the word tax, it is on income. This is not on income at all. There will be taxes in the future world superstate, of course. Every nation will have its own system of taxation. That's different. We are talking about the universal law of Baha'u'lláh. It is not on income. It is on savings. In other words, you spend whatever you want to spend, whatever you need, whatever you consider to be needful, you spend it. Nothing to do with Huququ'lláh. You are perfectly free during the whole year to do what you like. But if you have some savings that you are not using, then from that sum, you have to give 19% at your own wish, without any coercion, without any pressure by anybody. He tells his trustees, even in 2-3 cases, he says, if you feel that money is being given for Huququ'lláh because of pressure, don't accept it. He tells the trustees so clearly. It should come from love, from the heart, spontaneously. That's how it should come. And I think that it is a device that Baha'u'lláh thought of in order to carry, so that the head of the faith at any period will have enough funds to carry on with the work of the faith. Of course, the number of believers were very few at the beginning, in the days of Baha'u'lláh. The law of Huququ'lláh was not universally applicable. It only was applicable in the East and primarily in Iran. And the friends in Iran were not rich people for the most part, very simple people, none of them farmers, villagers, so on. So the income from the Huququ'lláh was very limited at the beginning. The Middle East, more particularly Iran, and only those who had enough funds, spare money, savings, that was very limited. But as the faith developed, naturally it was the funds of the head of the faith had more. That's why Shoghi Effendi was able to do so many things that during the period of Abdu'l-Bahá was not possible. Largely, or some projects, of course, had nothing to do with Huququ'lláh. He wanted to build the shrine of the Bab. He announced, this is a project. The temple in America, in the United States, in Wilmette, was a project that had nothing to do with the work of the faith at the World Center. It was a project. The House of Justice does the same thing. They want to have a temple in Chile, they announce it. And they call on the friends to assist this project in Chile for a temple. They have now a number of new temples, and they have announced it to us. And friends are left to themselves to make contributions for such projects. It's not the World Center, it's different projects. But for Huququ'lláh, of course, reminders about the importance of Huququ'lláh as a general principle is allowed, but no coercion, no pressure individually on anybody. Have you paid your Huququ'lláh? It is like asking, have you had your obligatory prayer today? You don't ask this question. No one has the right to ask this. This is between the believer and God. So this institution created by Baha'u'lláh makes the head of the faith not dependent upon appeals, send us contributions. It's not there. It preserves the dignity of the head of the faith. You will never find any letter from the House of Justice today saying that we are in need of more funds for Huququ'lláh. Please send us more funds. It's left to the conscience of the believers. If they do it, it's between them and God. But this saves the World Center from making specific appeals to the friends about Huququllah. Generally, yes, they can say the importance of Huququllah. The local assemblies can do that. Baha'i speakers can do that. And they do it. The trustees can speak about the importance of Huququllah as a general thing. But not as a national fund, send money to the national fund. The local fund, send money to the local fund. It's not like that. So this, I think, preserves the dignity of the World Center. When humans suffer because of tests and tribulations, illnesses, etc., their spirit may advance. What is the purpose of the suffering of animals? Very good question. Very intelligent question. I like that question very much. It is true. Some animals suffer. Maybe many animals suffer. They have illnesses. They have all kinds of reasons for animals to die or to become sick or anything. But we never had veterinaries. Now we have. People get even degrees. They even have a title, doctor, especially for animals. This is a major step forward. There are special clinics now for animals. And of course, it has become a business now, but it's there. Previously, it did not exist. In the Kitab-i-Ighan, Baha'u'llah speaks about the importance of protecting the lives of animals, assisting the animals, relieving them from suffering to the extent possible. He says, if this is so, see how much more important it is in our relationships with our fellow man. If we have to be worried about animals, we must also be worried about human beings, which shows that this is a reality. We have to worry about animals. And I think as civilization refines itself over the years, over various ages and so on, there will be more and more attention paid to this subject. For example, somebody has asked Abdu'l-Bahá. He says, is it permissible, according to the Baha'i teachings, for tests to be made on animals in order to see their reaction to diseases and so on, so that we may benefit from this experiment for human beings? The answer of Abdu'l-Bahá is yes, it is permissible, provided that in the course of the experiment, this is done in such a way that the animal does not suffer. It's a very clear instruction of Abdu'l-Bahá. So this whole question is correct. We as human beings, and as we become a continuously nobler generation of human beings, we will be taking more care about animals all over the world. You can be sure about that. Several times, Shoghi Effendi uses the phrase divine economy. For example, he writes, this is the reason why Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Bahá have both revealed and even insisted upon certain details in connection with the divine economy, which they have bequeathed to us, their followers. What does Shoghi Effendi mean by a divine economy? I really don't know. I can guess, but it's nothing to do with economics. Divine economy means here, in this particular sense, in my opinion, means order, divine order of Baha'u'llah. But this is only my personal opinion. I don't think it has anything to do with the economics of the world. The divine, the universal, the order of Baha'u'llah, of course, includes partly for economic affairs, the solution of economic problems, of course. But it's not primarily a reference to economics. I thought this morning to share with you two what I consider to be important points. The first is something that happened during my pilgrimage in 1957 in the presence of Shoghi Effendi. And I thought this might be of interest to all of us. And the second has to do with one of the tablets of Abdu'l-Bahá. And I'll explain what it is when the time comes. First of all, about this pilgrimage. It was on the last day of my pilgrimage. And one day in the afternoon, almost towards the end, just before he left, he quoted the statement made by Baha'u'lláh, "This is the day that shall not be followed by night." He quoted that. And then I had not asked any question, or this particular question. He himself wanted to explain it. And then the point that he made, I was, of course, aware of the fact that he had already stated in God Passes By that this is the day that shall not be followed by night, applies to the covenant, because the covenant will continue throughout the dispensation. And this power of force, this great capacity of the cause to remain alive and to continue guiding the souls and directing the lives of people, that this is not going to have a night. And that, according to the God Passes By, is the reference to the covenant of God. In other words, after Abdu'l-Bahá, this covenant is going to continue. So when he said that, quoted this passage from the writings of Baha'u'lláh, he said, this is a reference to future manifestations. I was totally confused in my own mind because I remembered what he had said about the covenant, and now he's talking about future manifestations. So I give myself the temerity to say something which was totally ridiculous. And I really, later, in the light of circumstances, I realized how unnecessary was this particular comment of mine. I said, I thought this was a reference to future guardians. He said, no, loud voice. He said, no, it's a reference to future manifestation. That was all. He sat in the car and left. God knows I have been struggling with this, this experience ever since 1957. I'm trying to understand what Shoghi Effendi was saying. Now, I'm going to share with you what I understood, finally, in my limited understanding. He had said in God Passes By, this was the covenant. He's not going to change that. It certainly is there. He's giving another interpretation to those same words. It's not that he was contradicting himself. What, as I understood it, finally, after much prayer and much thinking, and I still might be wrong in my conclusion, that what he said in God Passes By was a reference to the dispensation of Baha'u'lláh. What he told me just before he took his car and went, and with this loud voice, no, it's about future manifestations. He was applying, this is a day, capital D, that will not be followed by night, to the cycle, not the dispensation. I think finally I came to the understanding that what he's saying is that it's not only to the dispensation, it is also to the cycle. That's finally how I understood. But he wasn't going to contradict himself what he had written in God Passes By, you see. So, in other words, the covenant is going to protect the cause after Shoghi Effendi. That's what he's saying in God Passes By. Now, we thought, of course, that it's going to be through a series of guardians. And that was the no that he said. It's not so. The covenant was the covenant. If it would not be Shoghi Effendi, it would be the Universal House of Justice, and so on. Still the covenant. So that's not going to change. That's in God Passes By. The covenant protects the cause for the dispensation. You have to think of what I said previously. Think of a semicircle, a dome. That first is the Adamic cycle, 6,000 years. Then a far wider, greater semicircle, not the Adamic cycle, but the Baha'i cycle. This is 500,000 years. Now, this Adamic cycle has dispensations. It has had dispensations for 6,000 years. This thing, what we call the Baha'i cycle, also has dispensation in it. The first one is the Baha'i dispensation. So we have a smaller dome, a smaller semicircle. and then there will be others until it goes to 500,000 years. Now what will happen after 500,000 years, no one knows. But what Shoghi Effendi, I think, was saying to this poor, stupid Ali was that it applies to both. That's what he was saying. It applies to the Baha'i dispensation within the Baha'i cycle. Both cycle as well as the dispensation within the first dispensation of the Baha'i cycle. I don't know whether I've made myself clear, but this is how I understood it. The other thing that is, there is a tablet revealed by Abdu'l-Bahá, and I think this is very important for us to understand this. Someone has written Abdu'l-Bahá. He was living in Kermanshah. He wrote Abdu'l-Bahá that I don't understand what's happening in the world today. Things are becoming worse and worse and worse in morality, in ethics, in everything. Disorder, what's going to happen? How are we going to have this future world civilization, the oneness of mankind? How? Things are becoming worse every day. That is his question. So Abdu'l-Bahá answers. His answer is this. He says, this is not going to change. It will become worse. Disorder, immorality, deterioration, all this will become worse. But what I understood, and I'm going to do it through my arms, I understood that he's talking, Abdu'l-Bahá is talking about two lines, one going upwards, one going downwards. He's saying that this is disintegration, and that's, I'm borrowing this word from the writings of Shoghi Effendi. This is integration. I'm also borrowing this word from the letters of Shoghi Effendi. Two lines, one upwards, one downwards. There is also another line of positive thinking in harmony with the teachings of the faith, which is what's happening in the world today. The very existence of the League of Nations, the very existence of the United Nations, the fact that they have failed or will continue to fail, that's not the point. But the fact that they did exist is a wonderful thing. It never existed before. It was only during the period of Baha'u'llah's dispensation that these things have happened, because of the forces of the dispensation of Baha'u'llah breathed into humanity. So you have, for the first time, a League of Nations. It's a miracle. I remember my mother telling me, we were in Haifa, she said, this is the end of the war. It's terrible, it has been terrible after the First World War. But something wonderful has happened, a new thing has happened, we've never had it before. The League of Nations, it's a new institution. No one knew it's going to fail. But the fact that it emerged was itself a miracle, or it failed. And then we had United Nations. It is almost at the point of failure and collapse. And this thing is going to continue. Deterioration is going to continue, according to Abdu'l-Bahá. Now, the point that Abdu'l-Bahá is making is that this descending line of disintegration will be so low, so deep. You can imagine a hole made in the carpet here in this platform, all the way down. It's not this carpet. It goes all the way down. It's going to become worse and worse and worse. To a point, and now I'm remembering the words of Abdu'l-Bahá from the original Persian, to a point that humanity will not be able to bear it anymore. At that point, there will be a change. It has not reached yet. Now, this ascending line, Abdu'l-Bahá has explained about the descending line. Shoghi Effendi in his writings speaks about now the ascending line. And he uses a word and a phrase which is truly nothing but inspiration, obviously, from Baha'u'llah himself, no question. It's a prophecy, it's a prediction. He says, this lowest point and the highest point, which is what the faith of Baha'u'llah is doing, the Baha'is will be able to reach such a point of eminence, such a point of excellence, such would be their greatest exploits at the top, that it will coincide with that lowest point. Coincide. Coincide means at the same time. There is a difference, friends, between coincide in the writings of Shoghi Effendi and synchronize in the writings of Shoghi Effendi. You have to understand the difference between these two. Coincide are 2 points. Synchronize are 2 processes. Synchronization. When he speaks about this point of the highest exploits and the lowest ebb, he uses the word coincide. He doesn't use the word synchronize. But when he's talking about something else, I'll give you an example, for example. He says the world is passing through a number of development. This is another letter now, entirely. He says that there are 3 processes at work. One is the maturation of local assemblies and national assemblies. They have not reached maturation yet. They are in the process of maturation, not of maturity. Maturity is the point. Maturation is a process. Local assemblies and national assemblies are developing. It's a process. That's one process. Another process, he says, the process in the form of the steps leading humanity to the lesser peace. That is also another process. And the third process, he says, are the completion of the buildings on the Ark on Mount Carmel. This is not Ali creating these things for you, inventing these things for you. I am telling you what Shoghi Effendi says. If you want to have the quotes, take the words synchronization and the passage will come from Ocean. I haven't brought any references with me. I'm just talking from memory. Okay, so you have got 3 processes. One is the buildings on the Ark. The second is the steps leading to the lesser peace. And the third are the maturation of local and national spiritual assemblies. These 3, he says, he doesn't say they will coincide. He said they will synchronize. So you have got like this. Coincide is like this. 1 point here, 1 point here. Synchronize is like that. Process. So I thought I will pinpoint these points for you so that you will be careful when you are reading the writings of Shoghi Effendi. Every word counts. Every word has its proper place. Please repeat again, what should we do to have pure hearts or pure motives? I hope that you have not forgotten what I have said, like this dear friend must have forgotten. But I will repeat it. What I really said was that purity of heart, which is, my first counsel is this: possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart. The first adjective is pure. How shall we attain? I said that, in my opinion, I may be wrong, that purity of motive and purity of heart are brothers and sisters. They are together. That when Abdu'l-Bahá enumerates the primary obligations of members of local assemblies and national assemblies, first condition, he says, purity of motive. This is why it occurred to me that these 2 should be related. They're close. So I must purify my heart in the sense that I must purify my motivation. I must ask myself, Ali, I'm traveling, let us say. Why am I traveling? Why? Isn't it better for me just to be at home and rest? I have all kinds of pains in my body. You may have felt it, you have seen it. I'm trying. I have to ask myself, all right, you are trying, but why are you trying? What is your purpose? So that people will say, bravo, Ali. If that is the purpose. If it is so, as I have often told you, it is 0. Nothing. It's a waste of time. But if I am doing something in the hope that maybe he will accept, that's all. He sees it's enough. He knows it's enough. My purpose is his good pleasure. Finished. I don't want any reward. I should not have any reward. Expect any reward. I should have no expectation from any quarter, as a matter of fact. I should not be affected by praise. I should not be affected by blame. My relationship with my beloved, that's all. Why does the Bab call himself Remembrance of God in his writings? Well, manifestations of God, all of them choose certain titles for themselves. And the Bab does refer to himself as Remembrance of God. It's true. The original word is Zikrullah. Zikrullah has been translated by Shoghi Effendi as Remembrance of God. All the manifestations of God are remembrances of God. We say the one who spoke to God, the interlocutor, Mukallimatur, Mukallim, the one who spoke to God. Moses has a title. All the manifestations of God are Mukallimatur. They all speak with God. They all have connection with God. Everyone chooses a title for himself depending on the times, the places, the social environments in which they appear. But all of them are the same. The sonship, in the Bible, it even refers to the believers in the New Testament, in the Old Testament. The new believers are also referred to as sons of God in the Old Testament. To be, all the manifestations of God could say, we are all sons of God. It's correct. We are all remembrances of God. Correct. This is that station of unity among the prophets, as I tried to explain to you in connection with another question. How can I explain to a seeker that the Universal House of Justice is today the point of authority in the cause to which all must turn for guidance? It is true, of course, that Abdu'l-Bahá, in his will and testament, you must remember first that the will and testament of Abdu'l-Bahá has 3 parts, written at different times. The scholars of our faith have come to a temporary or a provisional conclusion that the first part was written around or during the year 1901, when the first commission of investigation came to the Holy Land. The second part has been assumed to be written in 1907, at the time when the second commission of investigation came to the Holy Land. The third, no one has ventured to make any assumption. No one knows. But it's obvious that it is later than the first 2. Maybe towards the end of his life. We don't know. And it's very short, it's very brief. Part 3. Okay, now, there is no reference at all to the guardianship in part 2. There is reference to the guardianship in part 1. The guardian has been appointed by Abdu'l-Bahá as not the president, but the sacred head of the Universal House of Justice. Sacred head. And if he cannot attend in person, he will appoint somebody to be his representative during the discussions, during the consultations. That's how it is stated in the first part of the will. Now, in the second part of the will, 1907, the Commission of Investigation, number 2, was far, far more negative than the first. Far more negative. As a result of the first, Abdu'l-Bahá was confined to the prison city of Akka. For the second, they carried the recommendation that Abdu'l-Bahá should be either exiled to the deserts of Libya or to be hanged, executed, either in Akka or somewhere else, but killed. That was, and they were carrying this with them to present to Sultan Abdul Hamid. That's in 1907. There was a revolution. Sultan Abdul Hamid was deposed. The commission was not able to give any recommendation. There was no sultan. The Young Turks took over. There was a complete revolution in the Ottoman Empire. It was actually, it led to the complete dissolution of the caliphate, both politically and religiously. Finished. Because the caliph was not only a political head of the Ottoman Empire and of the Muslim world, but he was also the religious leader. He was the caliph. The caliphs were the Abu Bakr and Omar and Osman and Imam Ali. They were known as the four rightly guided caliphs in Islam, in Sunni Islam, of course. But now, caliphate was both political and religious. The whole thing came out of existence with one blow. And no report was submitted at all. And what's more, Abdu'l-Bahá gained his freedom. They even double-checked with Istanbul, shall we include Abdu'l-Bahá? They said, yes, include Abdu'l-Bahá. He became free. Now, but he had written this second part at a time when he was in grave danger. And as he says, he did not have a moment's hope of life. Not a moment's hope of continued life. That was it. When you read part 2, there is no reference to the guardian at all in relationship to the Universal House of God. Nothing. How old was Shawki Effendi? He was about 10 years old. At the same time, Abdu'l-Bahá wrote a tablet, sent it to the Afnan, the builder of Ashgabat temple, who was in Ashgabat at that time. And he said, if anything happens to me, you come to the Holy Land, and I have a will. Of course, he had left the part 1 and part 2 together in the hands of the greatest holy leaf. I have written a will, and the way he summarizes it is very interesting. I have written a will in which I say that my successor would be the Universal House of Justice. You come, do whatever you can on my behalf, because I might be exiled or I might be killed, and elect the Universal House of Justice by calling on the Baha'is all over the world. This is text. The tablet, original tablet, is in Haifa. It's in the archives. So now we have to say, to remember, that in the second part also, he says, the friends should know, the Bab's station is this, Baha'u'llah's station is this, my station, I am a servant of the two. Everybody else, we are all servants. The point of reference is the Kitab-i-Aqdas. Turn everybody to the Kitab-i-Aqdas. He doesn't say the first part of my will. He says, turn to the Kitab-i-Aqdas. Now, what does the Kitab-i-Aqdas say? The Kitab-i-Aqdas outwardly contradicts part 1 of the will. Why? Because in paragraph 42, Baha'u'llah says that he is using religious endowments more or less as a pretext, but he's talking about the law of succession in the faith. First Baha'u'llah, then a period of the Aqsan, which is plural of Ghawsan, branches, then the Universal House of Justice. So the Universal House of Justice is at a time when there are no Aqsan. This is Kitab-i-Aqdas, paragraph 42. If it's not possible to have the election of the Universal House of Justice at that time, he doesn't use the word election. As I told you before, it's not possible for the House of Justice to come into being at that time. Conditions are not favorable. Then the people of Baha who speak not save after his own permission, his own leave, will be responsible for the headship of the faith. And these were the chief stewards, the hands of the court. He even anticipated the responsibilities to be conferred upon, for example, as it happened, 27 hands of the cause of God. He even anticipated that in paragraph 42 of the Kitab al-Aqdas. I think it's things like this that you have to master. My dear friends, we have to remember that there will be many attacks on the faith in the future. We are now a small minority. We will grow. This is decreed. This is destined. We will grow. Of course we will grow. That's why the House of Justice is continuously saying the process of entry by troops will have to go, to be followed by the process of mass conversion, all in his text, clear.